Previously, on the XCAL Fighter, we made an experimental Damascus pattern that I've never tried before. I saw my friend make a version of this pattern years ago and wanted to try my hand at it. After forging the general shape of the blade, I do a quick test etch to check the Damascus pattern, and it looks amazing. In this video, I'm going to be inlaying my maker's mark in 24 karat gold and attempting to grind one of the most complicated blade grinds I've ever done. Right off the bat, I'm going to etch my maker's mark in the blade. I need to be able to cut the groove deeper with my engraving equipment and smash the gold into the groove and into the dovetails I create. If I waited to do this until after the blade was hardened, I wouldn't be able to make those dovetails and cut the groove deeper for the gold very easily at all, because the steel would be hard.
We've got my maker's mark in gold inlay, Royer on one side and MS on the other side. It looks kind of rough right now. That's just because it's disc sanded with 120 grit disc. Now that the gold inlay's done, we can go ahead and rough grind in our bevel and our secondary bevel up here. So let's take this thing over to the broadback and start hogging away that material right after a coffee break. It hits the spot on a cold day.
Real quick, if you like what we're doing here on YouTube and want to support us, then become a member of Knifemaker Plus. As a member of Knifemaker Plus, you'll have access to monthly exclusive videos showing you how I make my knives. At the end of this month, we're starting a brand new series where I'll be making a folder named Enigma. Dive into this build with me as I learn, experiment, and teach how to build this massive folder. Don't miss out on the beginning of this brand new journey. Enrollment open soon.
Got the blade rough ground and have a 120 grit finish on the bevels just to reduce the chance of the blade cracking when we harden it. I'm gonna pop it in the electrically controlled heat treating kiln oven at 1550 degrees. We're gonna let it heat up, soak a little bit, and then quench in some nice warm Parks 50 to hopefully harden this thing up super hard. The blade's been soaking for 10 minutes. The oil's 110 degrees. It's time to harden our blade. Pop it out, up and down, a lot. Nothing dramatic. Turn the oven off. We shouldn't have to worry about the gold melting out because the 24 karat gold melts a couple hundred degrees hotter than our heat treating temperature we just did of 1550. I'm gonna wipe it down with a towel thing, not towel, can't think. T-shirt, yeah, that's what they're called. Blade looks pretty nice. I don't think it warped at all. Go ahead and check and see if it's hard now with a chainsaw file. It's good and hard. I'm gonna let the heat treating oven cool down and then temper this thing at like 400, maybe 410 or 15 degrees for a couple hours.
Once the blade's done tempering and cooled down, I begin surface grinding on the blade to get rid of the scaly surface and to flatten everything back up again. Now that we have nice flat areas on the sides of the blade, I can start laying out all my grind lines. With layout lines to go by, we can head over to the broadback and start roughing down the material using a 36 grit belt. This knife has angled plunges, and I want them to be perfectly even, so I use a file guide as a stop. I can grind all the way up to the file guide and have perfectly lined up plunges. The guide has a carbide top on it, so the belt won't eat away at it either.
I pretty much finished grinding this bottom bevel The next thing I need to do is work on grinding this top bevel. I'm kind of scared of this top bevel because it might be harder than the bottom bevel, and the bottom one was pretty hard. The reason being, we're on a small area, so there won't be as much of a flat area to lay the blade against since this bevel is smaller. So it'll be a little harder to hold consistent angles, and we have this little upswept curve right here to really be careful of as well. So we'll see how it goes. I have the file guide on here so we can try to get our plunge line matching the bottom. I want nice crisp plunges on an angle, matching on top and bottom. So I'm gonna keep that on there while I'm grinding, and we'll see how it goes. We'll start out with a coarse belt first to rough it in a little bit closer, and then we'll switch over to 120 and then maybe a little 320. I'm making it up as I go though.
The grind on this blade is pretty tricky. It's probably top 5 hardest grinds of all time that I've done so far. At least the blade's not very big, so there's not a lot of surface area to worry about while I'm grinding. The key here is to really take your time, slowly and methodically remove material. You can always take more material off, but you can't put it back on, so be careful where you take it off so you don't end up making a horrible mistake.
I've got the plunge on this top area all cleaned up on both sides, and I'm very happy with how it came out. This little area for about a 1/2 inch looks really good on both sides, but I still have more grinding to do in the rest of this area. I'm gonna try out something I haven't really done much of before, and that is to use a really skinny platen. This platen's only like 1 inch wide, and I cut this belt down to about 1 inch wide as well. The reason I'm doing that is because this isn't a very big area. And the 2 inch wide belt was mostly grinding on the edges, and I couldn't put a lot of pressure on it. The center wasn't really grinding away, so that's why you can see right here, this area is kind of thick right here, thin there, thin there. The same on this side pretty much, where it's a little thicker here in the middle. That's because the belt wasn't really grinding as much there.
The 1 inch wide platen ended up helping out tremendously. It allowed me to really focus where I wanted to grind with more precision. The top grind on this blade has this cool little radius where the center line comes right out the spine. In order to clean that up, I switch over to an 1.25 inch round wheel and grind on the blade vertically.
The top edge is done. Before I hand sand, I still have one more thing I need to grind. This bottom edge needs to be convexed. It's gonna be a mostly flat grind with a convex edge. That way it'll be really strong, but yet still be able to do more delicate slicing operations too.
In order to convex the edge, I use the 120 grit ceramic belt that I cut down earlier to 1 inch wide. I use it as a slack belt, so there'll be a little bit of a radius to the edge.
Here's how the convex edge looks after grinding it in. I decided to go ahead and just leave it at 120 grit, and we'll hand sand it from here. I left the edge of the blade about 5/1000 of an inch thick, and the convex comes up pretty far. So even though this knife is pretty beefy and tanky, the edge is pretty refined. Should give a nice balance between strength and sliceability. Got my blade ready to go. We've got sandpaper, Windex, light. Let's get this blade hand sanded. I finished sanding the blade to 320 grit, and I've decided I want to go ahead and do another little quick test etch to see how the Damascus looks now that the blade is fully ground. Whoa. That interrupted twist is pretty cool stuff. If you look real carefully, you see like a little bit of stars, like a section of stars, and then there's straight Damascus, and then there's more stars, straight Damascus, stars, and it alternates each bar all the way through the billet. I guess I should stop calling it a billet at this point. It's officially a blade now. Oh, look at that gold inlay name. That pops.
The hand sanding is only half over for now. The blade is at 320. It's time to do the 600 grit. It hasn't always been this way, but I really enjoy hand sanding these days. It's a time to just relax and listen to music or podcasts or audiobooks or all the above. I also don't have to worry about ruining my blade hand sanding. I've done enough of it to where I know I'm not going to ruin it.
I just sanded the bottom and top bevels to 600 grit on both sides of the knife. I was trying to be extra careful to keep that center line as crisp and sharp as possible so it stands out nicely on the finished knife. Over at the broadback grinder with a 36 grit belt, it's time to grind this little clip in on the blade, and then I'll clean it up with some finer grit belts afterwards. But first, it's time for coffee break. There wasn't much left in that cup.
I finished grinding the clip with 120 grit and then hand sand the clip all the way up to 600.
Here's the clip finished out to 600 grit. I love the way it looks. It really looks chisel-like when you look at it from the spine. It's pretty cool. Something that came out a little different than I planned, because I hadn't really done a clip like this, is I knew this line would change a little bit compared to what I drew. I didn't realize it would change this much and come back like this, but I really like it. I think it looks super cool. The next thing we gotta grind and hand sand on is the bottom of the ricasso here. I've got a little bit of material I need to take off, and we also need to shape this choil area. I'm gonna make the ricasso 900 thousandths of an inch wide, so I've got my height gauge with the carbide edge on it, and I'm using a 1-2-3 block to hold my blade square.
After all that grinding and hand sanding is finished, I'm loving this blade. I love the kind of double edge look we've got going on, the choil area being angled forward, and I absolutely am in love with the clip area, especially looking at it from the spine view. There's kind of like a little diamond and the clip looks really chisel-like.
I will see you in the next video. May the forge be with you. Bye-bye!
Don't forget to check out Knifemaker Plus, the link's in the description.